On today's show, well, it's not a show really, it's a YouTube video. On today's YouTube video, we're gonna make another one of our ever so popular lists. And I'm sure, like always, by the end of this, you'll either really agree with me or really disagree with me. Either way, in this video, we will attempt to define, to create the definitive list of every era of WWE. And by my count, many people's count, there have been 8 different eras. So a very important history lesson / criteria piece before we get started here. Just to be clear, we're not counting the triple WF era of yore, and even some of the WWF time. Technically, the third W was dropped in 1971. That next decade or so, there was a lot of back and forth about whether the WWF was a part of the NWA or not. Long story short, we're going to be beginning in 1982 when Vince Jr. purchased the company from his father officially. So without any further ado, let's go for it. I don't know what to do with my hands. Number 8, the TKO era / the present era. Now look, don't get me wrong, this has been great so far, okay? I'm not complaining whatsoever. Since Triple H took over things, since the whole TKO merger, it definitely seems like at least the product itself is definitely on the right track, and it's definitely doing some good things. The problem is, as I'm sitting here making this video, it's still rather new. Time will tell on all that. 6-7 years down the road, we could possibly encapsulate this era as one in of itself, but until then, it's going to stay right here where it belongs at the bottom of the list at number 8. Number 7, the pre-Hulkamania era. This would be the years of 1982 through 1984, which would be from the time that Vince McMahon bought the company all the way up until the birth and the dawning of Hulkamania. For better or for worse, you can consider this a transitional period within the WWF. So because all these things were changing very rapidly, this has pretty much everything to do with the past. I think we can all agree that once Vince Jr. bought the company from his father, his vision for taking the product in a more global direction is basically responsible for building the whole business that it is today. So this transitional period here of 2 years, we can go ahead and toss that to the side, put it at number 7. Number 6, the new generation. We're going to count these as the years of 1992 through 1997. These were the years that Hulkamania was winding down and the company was going in a more technical wrestling direction by beckoning the new poster child of the company to be Bret the Hitman Hart. And while we had a few real gems during this time, Bret being one of them, Shawn Michaels, Undertaker was in a really good time period of his career at the point as well. But overall, this time period is responsible for a lot of bad things and a lot of hokey things that ended up happening in wrestling. This is the era where we were given all the unemployment line gimmicks, like the wrestling plumber, the wrestling race car driver, you know, all that stuff. This was the era that I grew up in. I can tell you, by living through it, there has been no other time in my life where being a wrestling fan was more uncool than during the new generation era. A few good things, but for the most part, very hokey, very out of touch. As I'm saying all this, I'm kind of regretting not putting it at number 8. Number 5, the PG era. I'm counting these as the years of 2006 through 2012. You could also refer to this possibly as the Cena era, because that's basically what it is as well. My problem with this time frame is that, no disrespect to John Cena, but with the company going so PG and it kind of being like Hulkamania 2.0 with Cena, once again, no disrespect, it was just, I don't know, kind of lame. For us fans that had just lived through the Attitude Era into the Ruthless Aggression Era, which we'll get to here very soon. Now, there was some good things that did happen during this era, don't get me wrong. WWE completely transitioned WrestleMania during this time frame, because from 2007 on, the event would be held in stadiums, and pretty soon after that, soon to follow from there, one night wasn't enough anymore. There had to be 2. The PG era and John John Cena is responsible for all of that. So I think it's pretty fair to put it right in the middle here at number 5. Number 4, the Ruthless Aggression Era. Ah, yes, this would be 2003 to 2006 roughly. A lot of fans refer to this era very fondly, but to be honest, for me, this was one point in time where I kind of started to lapse out on the product a little bit. Also, I find it strange that people count this as a whole era in of itself, because to me, it always just kind of felt like the aftermath of what the Attitude Era brought in. Dialed down the sexual content to maybe about like a 60 or 70%, but then they pushed the violence maybe just a little bit further than it was. That's really the best way I can explain it. All in all, it was a very short amount of time when you look at it, but it is remembered very fondly by a lot of fans, so I figured it would be fair enough to go ahead and slide it in at number 4 right here. Number 3, Vince's last 10 years. So basically what I'm kind of doing here is that if we're following a timeline, this would be right after the PG era ended, which I would say would be right around 2011, 2012, somewhere in there. And if you really look at it, it was an era all in of itself as well. And this covers a huge amount of time. So there was a lot of good, a lot of bad during that time. I think it's definitely something that still needs to be studied for years on out. It's actually got to be quite fascinating when you break it all down. We would have fans during this time basically fight for their right to party. So yeah, it's a mixed bag for me, but you can't deny the great business that Vince had done during this time frame. For better or for worse, I was invested. Number 3 sounds about good. Number 2, Hulkamania, brother. Well, let's count Hulkamania from the time he won the title in 1984 all the way until about 1992 when we count the New Generation Era coming into play. A huge 8-year run of Hulkamania running wild. It's just amazing. His star power, along with Vince McMahon's vision, took the company to new heights. WrestleMania was created during this time frame. The way we all watched wrestling changed during this time frame. It still rings to me as at least the second most important and the second best era in WWE history. As great as it was, though, there can only be one number 1, and that is number 1, the Attitude Era. At the end of the day, this list is just going to really weigh heavily with you, and you're either going to support it or not based on the era that you're the most fond of. How many times can I say era in this video? I don't know. Someone count. This would be roughly from the fall of 1997 all the way until around 2003. The whole business changed once again, eclipsed the business and the records broken during the Hulkamania era. The numbers don't lie. You even adjust them for inflation to this day and they still hold up. And yes, I know that technically from a money standpoint, the company makes a whole lot more money nowadays as compared to then. Most of that money comes from the television rights fees and things like that. If we're talking straight arena numbers and pay-per-view buys, remember those? The WWE during the Attitude Era hit it out of the park. Not just out of the park, they hit it down the street, into the next dimension, into the next galaxy, into the next stratosphere, into the next ionosphere, man. Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, DX, etc., etc. I don't know what else you want me to say. To me, it'll always be number 1, and it still holds up to this day. Of course, this is all just one guy's opinion at the end of the day. Everyone's favorite era is some point in time that they've lived through. So there's a few of these that you can make an argument for being the best, and that's where we draw the line, is between kind of what's your favorite era and what the best era is. So do me a favor, folks, before you leave a comment down in the thing saying I was wrong, make sure you make that distinction, okay, between what your favorite one is and what the best one is, because a lot of them can be your favorite. Either way, I want to know what your favorite WWE era was, so let me know that down in the comments. I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. I want to thank you very much for joining me. Make sure you're subscribed. Leave a like on your way out. Until next time, we see you right here on Pro Wrestling Planet.
Yo, it's your boy JTG, aka Jay the God, one half of the illest tag team ever, Crime Time, and you are watching Pro Wrestling Planet. And we all know Pro Wrestling Planet is about that money, money. Yeah, yeah. That money. Yeah, yeah. Chill.